Welcome everyone to the week 3 edition, I guess pre-week 3 edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you, of course, by our friends at Underdog. We'll be going over all the waiver wire guys. Unfortunately, some key injuries to a few folks that will have to be likely impactful pickups for this week, and we'll get you set on how to prioritize that, which guys to target, and what does that mean for your lineups moving forward. Let's hit the music. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, September 17th edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Underdog. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me at JB Fantasy Sports. You can follow Jake at RotoJake or at RotoJake on Twitter. Of course, we're going into those week 3 waiver wire pickups. Injuries galore. It feels like some critical spots. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's just like 2 or 3 teams that are dealing with it, so the ramifications of that might not be impactful for a lot of folks. But before we get to those guys, let's get a word from our sponsors, Underdog. Of course, we're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to your popular best ball contest, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. Pick whether your favorite player will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night between picking 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. Right now, I think they have the over half-yard CD Lamb, or I guess the higher half-yard CD Lamb special at the moment, so you can check that out on Underdog. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code RWNFL to claim your free pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Must be 18 plus years or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms and conditions apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 533-342. New York, call 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. I know you love that part, Jake. That's
better and better every week, Joe.
Let's get right to our top 5 waiver wire pickup list. And of course, I mentioned the key injuries for me. It's going to be the San Francisco receiving core. And of course, what do we do with Isaiah Pacheco? And I imagine for a lot of folks, it's going to be that way. But you and I
also have Cooper Kupp everywhere. We've got Mixon. So there's a lot of them. All right. So we're going to start with our top 5. I'll go, then you go. I tried to stay as uninfluenced with my top 5 as possible. I wanted to be I wanted to create it independently before I found out what the industry consensus was. And it turns out I landed somewhere different. So either I'm a genius or I'm the complete oddball out. But let's see where this goes. At number 1, obviously we're talking about the Pacheco injury. So I put Samaje Perine at number 1. That's not the popular Kansas City back to put there, but I put him there for a reason, which we'll discuss in a bit. 2 was DeMarcus Robinson from the Rams, last man standing situation. 3 was Cam Akers from the Texans. That changes, if anything, if Joe Mixon turns out to be healthy. They're downplaying that injury a bit. So maybe. And then number 4, Carson Steele from the Chiefs. You know, that seems to be the more popular one. I'd personally rather have Pirine, and I tell you why in a bit. 5 is Quentin Johnston from the Chargers. There could be some fool's gold mirage risk there. But again, you got the first-round pick, scored twice last week. Not really a last man standing situation because Palmer's there, but if he can carve himself into a red zone threat, I think he's going to be good to go. Joe,
look,
how about you?
Let's get to it right away because I think a lot of people are going to be coming in throughout the show. We have Peter Shanky who wants to make sure he gets all of his waiver pickups within 5 minutes. He must hate listening to us. I have no idea. But the consensus is Carson Steele. That is my number 1 waiver wire pickup this week.
Yep.
But you're going with Samaje Perine. And let's just kind of set the table for everyone. Perine was cut earlier this offseason, joined the Chiefs right after cutdown day. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the NFL list. Important because it's not the one that comes with the PUP list where you come back within 4 weeks. We do not know when Edwards-Helaire will return. There is no news information right now. And Isaiah Pacheco, your starting running back for the Chiefs, out for at least the next 6 to 8 weeks. So whoever is identified as the main starter, you're getting at least, I think, running back 2 status or flex status out of one of these 2. And you're going with Perine over Carson Steele.
Yeah, and it was a close one. And like I said, I didn't want to go around and see what everybody in the industry said first. I wanted to make this decision on my own. And to me, Perine fits better as the Pacheco role because he can run, obviously, and he can pass catch. He's not terrible between the tackles. To me, Carson Steele, one, you've got the rookie factor with no pedigree. Sure, he's came in and established a role for himself, which is impressive. But for me, it's slow he's solely a between the tackles runner with some touchdown upside. And obviously that touchdown upside will be helpful for no PPR. Perine will be better for any kind of PPR, but I'm not quite sure the distinction is that simple. I think Steele maybe elevates his role a little bit, whereas Samaje Perine takes on more of the snap share. I mean, we had it was 69% snaps for Pacheco, 24% for Steele, and 8% for Perine. And also, this wasn't the deciding factor, but also remember that Carson Steele lost a fumble, and he had some, watching that play, it wasn't an outstanding defensive play or anything. It was a really lousy ball security effort on Carson Steele's part there. So to me, Carson Steele's kind of a glorified fullback, and Perine's more, obviously a ton more experience. And, obviously in this offense, you want to own the guy. So for me, I'm going to let other people place their bids on Steele. It's the trendy name. If you search at NFL Week 3 waiver wires anywhere across, Carson Steele is going to be the top pick everywhere. He's the top of every article, the picture for every article. He's the picture for our show even, of course. But I'm going to zig on this one and go a little bit of a different direction and get Perine at a cheaper price. Now, obviously, there are some complicating factors here because you have Kareem Hunt coming in for a visit. I didn't really think they'd go back to that after they were the team on their high horse that cut him, but, that's a possibility. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has another situation. He's on IR with a situation that's not super clear. I don't think I'd be counting on him. I mean, maybe it'd be a real deep league where you pick him up as a flyer, but, to me, it's Steele gets higher value in zero PPR, but as we know, those are getting rarer and rarer. Perine, I think, has a better chance to end up in an everyday back scenario.
All right, well, I'm going to give you two situations, I think, or at least one situation. I'm in 16 leagues this year. Before I do the show, before I even do our prep, I go through all the waiver wire pickups I would make, and then I try to give recommendations off that. I think there was one where Perine was available in my 16 leagues. So whether that's a reflection of everyone else who's listing this or not, I don't know. But Steele was available everywhere. So we do this show based off a 50% waiver wire pickup idea. So Yahoo and ESPN, if you're under the 50% threshold, you will make our list if you're relevant. That's why Perine is on there. But if you're in my leagues or even semi-competitive leagues, Perine has been picked up in a lot of them. Yeah, so if that's the case, real quick, let's just say Perine is picked up. You want to Carson Steele has value.
Yes.
You want.
I would still get Steele. I would still get Steele.
What's the budget you're going to be putting in for a waiver wire pickup for him?
I mean, if you're a Pacheco owner, you got to at least go in the 28 to 31% range, I think, because you need to have somebody, right?
I went even higher when I was setting mine. I was in the 41 to 43% range, and here's the reason why. I'm going analysis here, and it's why Carson Steele is my number one option. You had mentioned Kareem Hunt is at least getting a look by the Chiefs. Whether or not that's interesting from their history, I think is fair. But fantasy-wise, you're bringing real-life application-wise, you're bringing Kareem Hunt to the Chiefs because you're comfortable with this pass catching and pass blocking, which that was the reason why Isaiah Pacheco this year was a mid-second, early third-round pick and not a fourth or fifth-round pick because there was the Jerick McKinnons of the old and yada, yada, yada. There was a pass-catching back. Well, that wasn't the case. So if you're saying Carson Steele is going to be your main runner and then there's Kareem Hunt and whatever else mixing as the pass catcher and Samaje Perine, that tells me the Chiefs are comfortable with what Carson Steele is going to give them. And when he had that fumble, they still put him out there for that game-sealing drive against the Bengals. In that
absolutely.
We have had these scenarios before where we've had that guy. Yeah, keep going ahead. We've had
no, that was telling, and I mean that shows the confidence that they have in Steele. I just want to remind everyone that you want to talk pass catching capabilities. Samaje Perine is 1 year removed from catching 50 passes in Denver, right? So he's got that there. So to me, it feels like he could be more of the McKinnon type, but also maybe get a few more carries here. Now, the fact that they're even entertaining the Kareem Hunt idea is interesting. But even if they do sign Kareem Hunt, you're looking at a couple more weeks of him getting re-ingrained in things. I mean, it's not, even though he's been in that system before, you could say, it's definitely not the same. And we got to know if he's stayed in shape or is coming off the couch. We have no way of knowing any of that, right? So I figure at least we got a couple weeks of Perine. I mean, Pacheco broke his leg, right? If he's not on IR yet, it's pretty much an inevitability.
Well, that's I'll interject because again, I'm mentioning the Kareem Hunt aspect of things, not because you should go get Kareem Hunt. In fact, I'm not going anywhere near that.
He wouldn't have even made our top 8 running back list.
if the Chiefs are considering bringing Kareem Hunt back to the team, it's because he's a good pass catcher and pass blocker, which is the role that Samaje Perine has, why he's valuable, and why you're referencing him as the number one guy. If they were concerned about running between the tackles or whatever a Derek Henry kind of workload would be, not that the Chiefs have that in their backfield, but you understand the point.
Yep.
You would go get a Chris Rodriguez, or you would see a Zeke available. Right? There's a number of different options where you could find that kind of player off waivers, and that they're choosing Kareem Hunt, I think, is very important to me. So Carson Steele is among my top waiver wire list, and is why I'm going 40% of my budget to get him. I think he's going to be an impact for the next 2 months.
Yeah, I'm going to have a $30-something bid on Pirine in Stake League. And the last thing on Hunt, I think you have a great point there, but I also think it's just them doing their due diligence and trying to find the best available, because now they need depth. Right? Yes. Now they need depth. It could be anybody. Hunt just happens to be the guy that more mirrors the skill set of the role that Perine or McKinnon or Pacheco or whatever could have. Right? So no, I think that was a great discussion. I think we both hit our spots, and we're good to go.
Cool.
We got to do the rest of your top five. Right?
I know.
We stalled out.
Yeah. Well, this is the number one waiver wire. That's why we spent time on Carson Steele or Samaje Perine, because you're setting your lineup. So you're setting your waivers based off of what you're doing with this. So after that, for Carson Steele on my list, I did have Samaje Perine 3 for what it's worth. I think a pass catching running back does matter there. I have Juwan Jennings number 2 among my waiver wire list, and I actually think I will be going out, let's just say 12% budget among $100, something like that range, to make sure I'm getting the next pass catcher. We got reports earlier yesterday, Kyle Shanahan saying that Deebo Samuel will be out multiple weeks with a calf injury. Deebo Samuel's already been injured often in his career. I'm not surprised at all by that. Brandon Ayuk is still working his way back into things. I know the Niners offense doesn't look great. No Christian McCaffrey. It's a very confusing loss to the Vikings here in week 2. And Juwan Jennings needs to be, I think Juwan Jennings will immediately become a wide receiver 3 in fantasy moving forward. You look at the matchups they have up to coming. I think Niners will definitely rely on him heavily.
And also, if we learn anything from the McCaffrey situation, it's if Shanahan says a couple weeks, he's probably an IR candidate, right? Because he can't really take anything truthful there out of that camp here. I don't think he learned any lesson from the last injury reporting there. So, yes.
Right. And again, Ricky Pearsall still on IR. We have no idea when he's coming back. Juwan Jennings is going to be a factor and out there the whole time, which I want as many shares as I can in that Niners offense.
Exactly. It's hard to imagine you'd be in a league without your IR spot actually occupied right now. But if that is the case, somehow, some way, if you're the luckiest person in the world in first place in your league, I guess Pearsall would be a fine stash for that IR spot. Yeah.
To round up my top 5 of waiver wire guys, I also have Quentin Johnston. We had talked about him for the Chargers last week. I think he makes an appearance again. And then Cam Akers. So our top 5 is more or less the same. It's the order of importance. Carson Steele, Juwan Jennings was the only sneaky one for mine. You had Demarcus Robinson fine enough with both Puka and Cooper on IR. Samaje Perine, Quentin Johnston, then Cam Akers as your backup, Joe Mixon.
Exactly. And Demarcus Robinson is up to 46% rostered, I think. And some of that is first come, first serve leagues. So I kind of went the safe route like I did with Judy last week. And you took someone more widely available. So that's very understood. I think if I had to put a number 6 on mine, it probably would have been Jennings.
Okay, that's fair. Reminder, FanDuel, NFL kickoff is here, and FanDuel is giving away a special new user offer to RotoWire fans. Sign up and bet $5 on the FanDuel market and receive $200 in bonus bets, plus 3 weeks of the NFL Sunday ticket. Visit sportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook in the App Store today to claim this offer. Let's get a word from our sponsors from Blue Wire real quick. All right, we're back in. From a streaming quarterback perspective, you can go Sam Darnold. You can go the super hot hand Derek Carr. We don't know yet if Jordan Love will be there. I mean, there's a few of these situations that I think are tumultuous, but at the very least, your boy Joe Burrow was back this week getting you fantasy points.
Exactly.
So there's less people we have to kind of look for to replace at least.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I guess it almost makes sense to start with cuts in this situation. For example, I know I will be cutting Trevor Lawrence in Stake League this week because I need the roster spot. That league by design is designed to have thin benches, and I'm going to need the roster spot, and I have Burrow. I can no longer afford to hang on to a backup quarterback with my injury situation. So I imagine a lot of people are in that. I think in a similar boat, Matt Stafford. I mean, when you take away Nakua and Kupp, what's that pass? Especially we should emphasize how down passing is through the first 2 weeks this year. A lot of theories behind that, but passing's down, running's up, a lot of 2 tight end sets, a lot of 2 high deep safeties. All that stuff is becoming more commonplace. I guess the old Packers bend don't break defensive strategy, right? No big plays. And of course there have been a couple, but it's been the exception and not the norm here. So Anyway, passing game's down. I forget exactly where I was going with that. But anyway, a couple guys that you might need, say you're replacing Tua. I think Tua's a cut right now. You can't really count on him coming back. So Tua would be one of the first players you can cut. And so the first top guy I had was Derek Carr at 20%. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think we both thought before the season, and we probably weren't wrong, that Derek Carr is kind of bad. And he's just exceeded all expectations with the Saints. The Saints are 2-0, and I get it. Week 1, it's the Panthers, right? They're terrible, just awful, right? But then they come out and do it against the Cowboys, who at least have some talent on that defense, and that's what opens my eyes a bit here. So I think this Clint Kubiak offense, or whatever they've got going, this the heavy play action, the fact that Kamara is running well to make the heavy play action effective, and just the emergence of Rashid Shaheed. He is, we figured he is going to be so boom or bust on a week-to-week basis like he was in the past, but he's the perfect type of player that benefits from that heavy play action, heavy pre-snap motion. So suddenly you've got the Saints that are the number 1 offense in the National Football League, and then just throw the cherry on top here. Taysom Hill's availability might be a little shaky. I know Taysom Hill. Yep. It'll change the play calling a little bit if he's unavailable because, they run some of those QB gadget plays with Hill, on third and medium short sometimes. If Carr, obviously they have to run different types of plays with Carr there under center, but that is just adding to the opportunities for Carr here. So week 3, they have the Eagles who, they gave up a good amount of points to Jordan Love and Jaden Reed. They were looking pretty good on Monday Night Football last night until Cousins had just pulled that rabbit out of the hat, that crazy game-winning drive on the road. I mean, that takes some stones there, so props to Cousins there. But the fact that defense can give that up, I think Kubiak will game something up for Carr and the Saints to have another solid week against the Eagles. I don't think they'll go 3-0. I think the Eagles will be back with the vengeance, but I think this offense will do just fine. And among quarterback streamers, he's probably my top 1 this week. You did mention Sam Darnold. I have him on here. He's home against the Texans. That one's very contingent. You need to make sure Justin Jefferson's playing for that to even be remotely there. And I think Justin Jefferson just has a quad contusion, so he should be all right. You got another guy in the conversation if you're going to replace Tua, and it's maybe a little deeper. Geno Smith, he's actually 34% roster, but he's had a few good fantasy games as well. He's at home against the Dolphins this week, so those are the streamers.
I'll give you one deeper option before we get to the 2 QB leaps, and that is Gardner Minshew against the Panthers this week. I would probably rather have Gardner Minshew than Sam Darnold, even if Jefferson's healthy. That's right around that range. I think the Panthers are going to look good with Andy Dalton now. Like the offense will look significantly better with Andy Dalton. You don't make that move to get off the number 1 overall pick to bench him after just a year and 2 weeks, unless you're going to lose the locker room. So I really think that Andy Dalton's going to make that offense look good. But without Derek Brown, who was their best player out for the year last week, that defense is still bad. So I think Gardner Minshew, they're going to try to run. They're going to stink at like they have the past 2 weeks, and then they're going to have to pass. So I think Gardner Minshew is kind of the one I like a little bit more in that instance.
Yeah, and Gardner Minshew is turning out to be a far better quarterback for Devontae Adams too.
Yep.
When you've got a weapon like that, I think they have just enough. He very, very gritty from Gardner Minshew coming back against the Ravens last week. That was very impressive. I'll do quick hitters. I'll do 2 quarterback format in quick hitters unless there's anything you want me to stop. Go for it. But
fire away.
Yep. All right. So as you just mentioned, Andy Dalton's in for Bryce Young in Carolina. They have the Raiders here. Justin Herbert got rolled up on for the Chargers. X-rays are negative. He's got the questionable tag right now. It's either Easton Stick or Taylor Heineke would be the backups there. Got to touch on the Packers. Malik Willis, not terrible, like 15 fantasy points. And maybe they even let him throw a little bit more here. But apparently Jordan Love, with his knee issue, is closer than we thought to returning. But if he doesn't week 3, Malik Willis has a revenge game at Tennessee in store. So keep that in mind. Looks like Pittsburgh finally announced their week 3 starter. Russell Wilson is healthy, but Justin Fields will be starting. He's seems like Justin Fields is realizing that he can just kind of manage the game in Pittsburgh, let the defense do the work, let the running game do the work, and do just enough. So he's 2-0, so we might as well keep it going. Obviously, everyone remembers Tua from last week Thursday. It doesn't seem like they're bringing anybody in. Well, I guess they did. The Dolphins did bring in Tyler Huntley from Baltimore's practice squad, but Tua's backup, and they say they're sticking with it, is Skylar Thompson. Maybe that could just be coach speak. We have to say we're confident. I'm not super confident in that. I'd actually be looking to stream defenses against Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins. But that's a quick rundown of 2 quarterback leagues. Any of those guys make it into the streaming conversation in Standard?
So you and I are in the 30 roster, 12 team deep dynasty superflex at RotoWire, and I'm also doing the Scott Fishbowl. If I'm organizing how I'm picking these streaming quarterback options, Taylor Heineke is worth a roster spot. I think he will absolutely be the best backup. Now, remember, he was acquired by the Chargers only 3 weeks ago, so it's the same situation as Malik Willis. In the same token, I don't think Justin Herbert misses time. So Taylor Heineke is going to be a backup, whereas I really think Tua is going to be out for an extended period. We have little to zero knowledge right now as to what that situation is. It's kind of an unfounded one before. We have no idea how that's going to look like, but I would rather have Tyler Huntley fantasy-wise than Skylar Thompson. I'm not picking up Tyler Huntley in Scott Fishbowl. Like, I'd rather have Andy Dalton in that instance. I think he's going to make that offense way better.
Andy Dalton might be number one among these because he has a chance to grab the job and stick with it the rest of the year. Malik Willis has an expiration date. Any of the Herbert backups have an expiration date. Justin Fields might even have an expiration date. Who knows when the old Justin Fields could come back around. But Dalton actually has a chance. And if you're going by that logic, Skylar Thompson would be number 2 because he has a chance to grab it and hang on to it.
I'm right there with you. Let's get to the running backs. And Jake, I'm going to jump things in here because we have a good question. Somebody asked in the chat, would you drop Jalen Wright for Braelon Allen? It's a bench spot. But I know I have an opinion, which I have a feeling is going to be different relative to everyone else. But let's go out laid out here. Braelon Allen or a guy like Jalen Wright, who, again, didn't do a whole lot in his debut week 2 with Raheem Mostert out for the Dolphins.
Yeah. I mean, Mostert will come back. Jeff Wilson's got an oblique injury that's not severe. He'll come back. I just don't think this offense runs like we can expect it, and A-Chain is still your number 1 guy. So for me, it's Braelon Allen because there is, as we saw, clearly some standalone value and some value as a pass catcher this week, and that Jets Titans game was close, right? It's not like it was a blowout and Braelon Allen was cleaning up during garbage time. Braelon Allen was an active part of that offense because they probably don't want to overload Breece Hall too early. And if something happens to Breece Hall, Braelon Allen is suddenly a top 12 running back here because we've seen, standalone value. He suddenly carries the workload. He clearly can do something at the NFL level. So, yes, I would say Braelon Allen's the better bench spot in this situation.
All right, so I'm going to counter you on this one.
All right,
I totally understand. In the event that Breece Hall goes down, all of fantasy is done because it's really sad, and I'll be disappointed because I like Breece a lot, and I don't want that scenario to go. So I'm wish casting that Breece stays healthy, and that
I want Breece to stay healthy too. One of my 2-0 leagues is featured Breece Hall. So
the standalone value for Braelon Allen makes complete sense. I also think, in the same token, I've said that twice now, I shouldn't be. Your Braelon, like the touchdown that he got, the first one was like nobody touched him. The schemed stuff for it was not gimmicky is not the right word, but I'm also not saying, oh yeah, Braelon Allen clearly was like an excellent play, just worked out scenario wise for that exact formation.
Yeah, and we have in the chat saying Breece Hall was cramping too. So okay.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying Breece Hall playing or not playing is going to be the determining factor for this. I'm very concerned, I've said this at the beginning of the year, maybe this is wish casting, that Devon Achane is going to get hurt if he continues to get 30-plus touches a game. Like, I have zero idea when your quarterback was out for the rest of the game, you're losing by 21 points, that you're still throwing little dump-down passes when he pulled Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle out. There was zero reason why Devon Achane is out there in Thursday's game, and it makes me really concerned that you're talking about a 180-pound guy with the workload he's had the first 2 weeks of the season, that he's going to stay healthy. So if it's Mostert that gets injured and already has, and if Jeff Wilson's there and already gets injured, and then Devon Achane is already set, maybe this offense just stinks, and you want zero part of it. But I really believe Jalen Wright will be the true bell cow in that event, whereas I don't think Braelon Allen, if the worst-case scenario occurred and Breece Hall is out, is the main bell cow. So that's the only reason. But like standard week-to-week upside, Braelon Allen makes complete sense to me. I would pick him up over Jalen Wright. But I'm going to just give you the other side of things because it's on my mind right now with what we saw last Thursday.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, you gave me something to think about, but I just think 3 guys getting hurt and the offense thinking is someone staying healthy and the offense just thinking, to me, overweighs 3 guys getting hurt and the possibility of the offense is still good. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Real quick, and I'm proud of the chat. I haven't seen too many questions about the Chiefs backfield. Again, we did reiterate at the top of the show.
Yep.
I'm picking up Carson Steele first, and I'm putting about 40% of my budget on that. And I'm in 16 leagues. Steele's widely available ever. I think there's all but 3 that he's not. Yep. In my 16 leagues, Samaje Perine was not available in all but 1. So that's the difference in what we're doing hierarchy-wise with bringing these guys up. But I think Carson Steele is going to be a factor all season long. You kind of disagree with Perine.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the other side. I have Perine a little bit higher. I think you can get away with far less percent of your budget and sneak in under the Steele owner and get somebody that's going to be closer to an every down back, whereas Steele's role might not change quite as much as people seem to think. But both sides. Rewind to the front if you want the full discussion. I think we both made a lot of good points there.
Anyone picking up Kareem Hunt? Something like, would you be considering that? Even the deepest of leagues that we do, I don't know if I'm picking him up.
Yeah, no, not yet.
Okay, cool with that situation. And then the Texans backfield, I think Mixon's gonna be fine. You're not putting him out there against the Bears, whose offense could not generate anything Sunday night, unless you thought Mixon could be able to play and be a factor. But it is worth noting that he did have an ankle injury, only played 7 snaps in the second half after that occurred. Again, I think that's more the Bears just being bad than it is Joe Mixon, but said it's not a long-term thing. After all the crap that we've gotten with injury stuff, you should be wary about what coaches are saying, but I am not very nervous about this one.
I was so doom and gloom on Sunday night that I watched Pacheco go down, and I watched Cooper Kupp go down, and then I watched Mixon go down, and I was like, all right, F it, it's time to get the birthday scotch. It lasted less than a week here. Let's get that going, because we're drinking to a season over. But it turns out Mixon actually going to be probably okay. In the event that he's not, Cam Akers would still be the guy to roster over Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce was inactive last week with a hamstring injury, and Dameon Pierce just isn't that good to begin with. So I think Cam Akers is RB2 there.
Cool. And then somebody that we had picked up actually in the auction draft that we did for the NFFC, and I promptly cut week 1 because he wasn't involved. Deonta Foreman surprisingly gets 14 carries here in week 2.
Yeah, I can't really explain that, and I'm actually not, with all these other running backs that are possibly out there, I don't really see myself bidding on Deontay Foreman, but he shows up in a whole lot of leagues, or a whole lot of waiver pieces. I wanted to just make sure we got the rundown on him in here. Deontay Foreman had 14 carries in week 2 after not touching the ball a single time in week 1. He also did fumble in week 2. I think the coach came out and said he's a better between the tackles runner than Ford. I don't know if that's really true. Foreman seems more like a run into your to the back of your lineman type of guy, whereas Ford shows a little bit more vision. But nonetheless, the coaching staff believes it, so we have to take it into account. We also have to remember that Pierre Strong left that game with a hamstring injury, which is part of the reason that Foreman got some of the work he did. Why he got that much more than Jerome Ford is beyond me. I don't think it should continue, but it might. And of course, we got the Nick Chubb return looming in possibly a couple of weeks here. I haven't seen much on that lately. The Browns are at the Giants in week 3, which game flow you'd think would be favorable to running backs. Obviously, Jerome Ford's still the back to own, but I could see in a desperation pinch picking up Foreman and hoping for maybe 6-7 points.
From a cutting running back perspective, you're trying to move some of these plays. I didn't think. Yeah. I'm still on Quorum. I'm still on Trey Benson. I'm not dropping either one of those guys. If you had dropped Zach Charbonnet week 1, you're certainly hurting after Kenneth. So that's the scenario in which I'm seeing with these running backs.
Also, Zach Charbonnet is still out there in 31% of Yahoo leagues. I wanted to mention that, just in case, because, that's worth cutting. But yeah, Corum seemed to overtake Ronnie Rivers this week, which is interesting. I am probably going to have to cut Corum in stake leagues, so too bad you're on the other side, or you could snap that up. But I am just, my entire team's injured, so I'm going to have to do that. Another cut, Tank Bigsby. I know we recommended him last week. Seemed to be kind of a mirage. He actually ended up playing 0 offensive snaps, hurt his shoulder on a kick return, and he had a fumble, but it was negated by a penalty. So Tank Bigsby's out. I'm also almost ready to take the loss on Chase Brown. I'm not cutting him unless I have to, but unfortunately I'm in a spot where I'm going to have to. He only touched the ball 4 times last week in a game where obviously offense was a priority and they had to play the whole time. So some options that you can no longer hold on to. I mean, Trey Benson, I'm actually going to end up having to start him in stake league. I think he did get 11 touches last week, but granted that was kind of a blowout there. So James Conner's still the bell cow there. But yeah, I can't afford to keep a guy like Corum in stake league, and that's a 14-team league to tell you. So I just, we gotta throw some cuts out there. If obviously utilize your IR spot first, cut your backup quarterback, cut your second kicker defense here, but most people have done that already given the injury situation. So we want to throw some other names out there.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, if we're recommending Carson Steele should be picked up by everyone, you have to make some tough choices.
Yeah.
And theoretically, only one team can get him. Or in the same case of Samaje Perine, only one team can get him. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
If Corum's the bottom of your bench, are you dropping him for Steele?
Yes.
All right, and guys, that means a lot coming from Joe. So I just want you guys to know that.
I'm envisioning the leagues in which that scenario would occur, and I'm probably 2-0, and maybe I should be able to sit on Blake Corum if that's the case. No, I mean, I'm not trying to speak in jest too much, but yes, I would probably in that scenario because I know what Carson Steele is. Now, it might not be the realization.
Would you do it for
Pirine or no? Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to find myself in that situation, and my answer is yes to both.
Yep. In the event that I need Carson Steele or Samaje Perine to play meaningful fantasy opportunities for me, I have to cut Blake Corum, even if I think that's like the unrealized gold mine. This is the Blake Corum thing. Jake, mark this down now. September 17th, 2:30 Central Time. The Blake Corum thing is going to be like Justin Jefferson for us. From 3 years ago when Mike Zimmer was not using him in his rookie year, and we're like, don't drop Justin Jefferson, and people still did, and then that was a league-winning guy by week 3 and onward. I would love to not cut Blake Corum, but in your case and a lot of other people's cases with all the injuries, you have to. It's just going to have to make sense. I think.
Yeah, and Brian T. in chat, I completely agree. He's got to cut Corum for to get Braelon Allen as a Brees owner. That's just a cover your ass move, really. Is what that is.
Perfect example of where I wouldn't want to do that on paper, but when your roster is constructed that way, you have to do that. So
absolutely.
Completely agree with you. All right, let's get a word from Vivid Seats. NFL football is, of course, back, and you can gear up for the gridiron with Vivid Seats and score tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every touchdown, every tackle, and every eye-popping play of your favorite team, live and in person. And with Vivid Tickets rewards, you earn perks with every single purchase. Each ticket you buy gets you closer to your reward. Just buy 10 tickets and simply cash in, and you get your credit towards your 11th ticket purchase. It's that easy. Plus, Vivid Seats is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with code ROTOWIRE. That's code RotoWire, ROTOWIRE. From the upper deck to the front row, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all 24 games that matter to you. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats, experience it live. From a receiver perspective, we have mentioned Juwan Jennings and Demarcus Robinson. Juwan Jennings with Deebo Samuel out, no Ricky Pearsall. It's going to be just Brandon Ayuk and just Juwan Jennings. I think Juwan Jennings is at least a 15% budget bid on a lot of different rosters and a lot of different leagues. You're mentioning DeMarcus Robinson. Makes sense because Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on injured reserve. I had liked Tyler Johnson last week. I'm stubbornly not wanting to get rid of Tyler Johnson this week, but a lot of people also mentioned Jacob Whittington too. And I think so long as Stafford is healthy, which might only be one more week with this offensive line.
Case,
right. So long as Stafford's healthy, any one of those three guys I think are at least worth rostering on your team.
I also think Colby Parkinson's going to start sucking in even more targets though.
Yeah, it's another one of the tight end pickups. Well, everyone's always asking about Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, so we'll get to that tight end.
Yeah, but before we dive deeper into wide receivers, I just want to mention your obvious first check is Rashid Shaheed, who we thought of as a boomer bust week to week player. He's boomed in week 1 and week 2, so take notice. He's only 63% rostered in Yahoo leagues, so I'm starting to think that's not a mirage and that he's a great fit in this offense here. So definitely check at least to see if Rashid Shaheed's available. Also, wasn't ranked, but I think just about every other waiver wire resource of any kind I looked at mentioned Alec Pierce from the Colts, who got a mention last week, discussed last week. He's 29% rostered, so availability is drying up a little bit. I thought that week 1 was a total, smoke screen. I thought that he just got lucky to come up with a couple of the big deep balls from Anthony Richardson. And he did get more action this week that was in a more sustainable situation. I still don't think Anthony Richardson's that good as a passer, and I still think that when Josh Downs comes back, which could be
this week.
Yeah,
it sounds like it will be this week, actually.
If you want to talk about a sneaky ad, maybe think about Josh Downs because he won't even be on anybody's radar. But anyway, so all Pierce really did is solidify his spot on the depth chart ahead of Adonai Mitchell. To me, because Mitchell had a pretty bad drop and Pierce has obviously been a lot more reliable. But yeah, Pierce and Downs, and I just don't know. I mean, Pittman hasn't been great, but how many pass catchers do you want in a year where passing's way down on this type of offense with what's essentially a run-first quarterback here? So I wanted to mention Pierce because you'll see him everywhere on every column, but that's kind of a pump-to-break situation for me.
We had also had Quentin Johnston on both our top 5 waiver wire lists. Somebody in the chat asked, would you pick up Quentin Johnston over Josh Palmer? Palmer was everyone's sneaky sleeper receiver, including mine. I thought for sure the chemistry that Palmer and Justin Herbert had. Well, Palmer was banged up entering week 1. I think they're slowly working. He's got more snaps. You look at Jerry Donabedian's awesome box score and snap breakdown article. Palmer plays more week 2, but that game was over by halftime again. So this is the interesting part, and I wrote about in my gambling article posted today. I don't think we actually know any of these teams, the Steelers or Chargers, who play in week 3. I don't think we know what either of them actually are because they played complete cupcakes through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Exactly.
I would assume Quentin Johnston is not a mirage. Those 2 touchdowns were single coverage, good on him for making the plays. In the same breath, it's a concern to me that I don't think the Chargers want to pass the ball, and I don't think they'll be able to pass the ball when teams that are better than who they played the first 2 weeks are going against them, which is effective the rest of the season. So just keep that in mind. I would not go aggressively. I would much, much, much rather have Juwan Jennings than Quentin Johnston if all things are equal.
Yep. My Chargers 2-0 to start. No.
Your Chargers? What is that?
No,
your Chargers.
Okay. But that was one of our biggest over/under win total arguments.
You're right.
Took the over on that. But we're okay so far. Let's keep scraping by here. I'm actually not sure I would cut Palmer for Johnston.
Okay.
Oh man, I really got to think about that. Yeah, that's a tough call here because
there's not a world in which Palmer is going to produce at a level where he gets repicked back up in a league where you're considering dropping him in the first place. That's where Palmer could be targeted 7 times and get 5 catches for 57 yards. Sure. But in that scenario, no, he's like, can't wait to go grab Palmer off a waiver. It's like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. So Johnston over Palmer at this point. I mean, you've got an early pick who with a bunch of drop issues is a rookie that's starting to come into his own. Reminds me of one Devontae Adams, if anything. So the profile is there here. So he's interesting. One more receiver I wanted to toss on here though, just because of the Minnesota Vikings injury situation, is Jalen Nailor, who has quietly scored in each of the first 2 weeks here. Jordan Addison with an ankle injury was inactive last week. We don't think the Justin Jefferson injury is anything more than a thigh bruise, so he's probably back. But either way, I mean, last week, Nailor had a 93% snap share and 28 routes ran, the highest among all wide receivers for the Vikings. So the rookie's getting plenty of action, and with Sam Darnold not being as bad as we thought he might be, Nailor could be. It's weird to say Nailor could be this year's Addison, right? Where you get him for next to nothing off the wire. Suddenly he develops towards something as a nice compliment to Jefferson here down the stretch. So I wanted to throw a mention for Nailor in there, and I guess I had a couple more honorable mentions as well.
Yeah, go for him, because I talked about Juwan Jennings. Again, I'm picking up Juwan Jennings over every other receiver out there, over Quentin Johnston. But in those deeper leagues, I have a lot of Jalen Nailor at this point, who I think has quietly become the number 3 receiver for that team, no matter if Addison...
He's definitely the number 2 receiver right now until Addison...
Well, say, when Addison and Jefferson are healthy, Nailor is still the number 3. I think that matters to that offense that can do that at times.
Yeah, and he might sniff some of Addison's workload out too. I think he seems to have earned that so far. I mentioned Andre Iosivas on here, two touchdowns and 2 catches, just because that's worth mentioning here. We don't know the T. Higgins situation quite yet. I definitely don't know the T. Higgins situation, and the Bengals. Whatever. They got to throw to somebody. I mean, obviously, I think those things should go to Jermaine Burton, but they're letting Iosivas play anyway. We're getting there. I also threw Khalif Raymond on here for the Lions, just in case Amon-Ra St. Brown is on injury watch. But Raymond is probably someone you can grab after waivers process. I also, in the sneaky ads video that gets put out on Mondays before us, I thought Waylon made a real great point here. Deontay Johnson from Carolina, listen, he was drafted.
Sneaky, yes.
He was drafted everywhere. It's not sneaky because he's almost been held on to universally here, but he got down to 82% rostered. So after a couple horrible weeks with Carolina, there's definitely some managers that rage dropped him out there or dropped him in an injury fit. Take a look at Deontay Johnson, because I don't think his career just fell off a cliff after 2 bad games with Bryce Young. I think Andy Dalton could really help his situation. So worth the check there.
I actually recommended dropping him in the chat earlier, so maybe I have to go back and erase some messages. But that's fair. I kind of forgot the Dalton thing.
Quarterback change could mean everything.
It's possible, yes. We had Poor Boy Sin had asked a question. I think this is a trade. So Demarcus Robinson and Samaje Perine for Zach Charbonnet. And I would assume it's a trade, although it's interesting because all three of these are hot waiver wire pickups we've mentioned. If it's those two pieces for Charbonnet, I'm making the trade. I want the Charbonnet side of things because I think he's going to be a starter for a couple weeks yet with the way the Seahawks have seemed to deem that Kenneth Walker injury.
Yeah, exactly. So the Kenneth Walker injury, what am I looking at? Not playing week 2. It's an oblique thing. He didn't practice at all, so that's interesting. He was listed as doubtful going into game day, so there's that. But the moment Kenneth Walker comes back, I think Walker, is back to getting a 70-80% snap share here, where Demarcus Robinson, with 2 receivers on IR, is going to be wide receiver 1 for the Rams for a good 6 weeks. And then, of course, obviously, you know what I think of Perine. Rewind to the start of the show if you want.
Yeah, so we're on the flip side of this.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to give me Perine. So for me, if that's a trade question, then yes, I would much rather have the Demarcus Robinson and Perine side.
Let's play this scenario out, because I think in a deeper league, let's just say it's the NFFC, for example, and you have a 20-man roster spot. I want 2 players that I think will play all year round, which is Demarcus Robinson and Samaje Perine. But if it's in your 12-team friends and family work league that's not RotoWire, and Zach, you're getting a starting running back out of 2 guys that probably aren't playing, that's where I say Zach Charbonnet. So that's the difference, I think, between the 2 situations. If this
exactly, I mean, yeah, in a 10 or 12-team league, the other couple guys are the Robinson and the Perine are going to be on that ad drop line possibly for parts of the season later on. So I guess, yeah, if you knew Kenneth Walker was out for a week and needed a boom play for 1 week, that's a situation you do that. But I think in 95% of scenarios, you want the Robinson Perine side of that.
Any cuts we're making at the wide receiver position?
All right, so some obvious ones. Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas, didn't get any targets. They're saying they need to get him more involved, but do you really need to mess around with this Patriots offense? I mean, the guy we're going to talk about, actually, I'll save the Patriots offense for the next segment here. Curtis Samuel, adios. You don't need him anymore, around 20% of snaps. Not really doing that. Then I wanted to get really, really intense with it. I wrote on here, could you cut Christian Watson in an injury pinch? I have a 12-team league that's ravaged by injuries where it's either literally I start Christian Watson or I cut him for someone that's going to play better. Watson obviously he had the touchdown in week 1 with Jordan Love. If the Packers offense continues to look like it did in week 2, there's no reason to play anybody except for Romeo Doubs, or I guess Jaden Reed too. But Watson seems to clearly be number 3 in that pecking order. Even Wicks got more involved this week. So that's a possible cut. I don't like it because I still love Watson's long-term potential, but it's absolutely one of those situations where I might consider doing it. I mean, Terry McLaurin starts to come up in this type of name now. I'd much rather hold on to him. I mean, people are making tough decisions here. I had the poll on my Twitter this week too about Amari Cooper.
Oh yeah, what was the result of that one from last week? Amari Cooper was available on Jake's waiver in one of his. It wasn't a deep league, it was a deep enough league, and you had asked, do I put all my fab in him? Right?
I put a $33 bid down on him, intending to go back and raise it. He ended up actually going for 42, which was it. Okay. I don't know if not everybody saw that, but 2 people tied for 42, and whatever tiebreaker system they used did that. So I threw that out there. I mean, So there's just in a 10-team league, I could easily see cutting McLaurin or Cooper again. Watson probably more for 12-team league, but I've seen so many rosters that you either give up on the season in week 3, or you make drastic moves to your roster to be able to field a lineup and try to get a win, or you field a lineup with injured players in it and take the L, hoping your team gets healthier in the next couple of weeks. But that's a real dangerous game to play too here. I'm just kind of basing these off situations that I'm running into and thinking about. So wanted to throw some tougher cuts in there.
Real quick, we had a follow-up on the trade offer from Poor Boy Sin, who had said he was going to trade Samaje Perine and Demarcus Robinson for Zach Charbonnet. He has Kenneth Walker. So the idea would be that you're getting a backup to Kenneth Walker, and he got Kenneth Walker for Zay Flowers. I'm sorry, he got Kenneth Walker and Zay Flowers for Jamar Chase. Not that part matters, but I think that was a good windfall trade for him with Jamar Chase. But knowing that you're getting the starting backfield of the Seahawks figured out, would you make that deal then instead?
I think so, because then you always have a starting Seattle running back.
Who I think matters. That's top 20 running back at minimum every week, right?
Yep, every week. I assume Kenneth Walker's not his RB1, that he's got another RB1 there.
Correct.
Just based on his ADP, right? So, yeah, in that case, I could do it. I could see doing it because this way you have a starter the rest of the year, as opposed to Robinson and Perine might be fringe flex plays on a lot of weeks here, depending on the roster here. So, yes, with that, this is why context matters. Thank you for adding that context. And, yeah, that makes me more likely to go in the direction of Charbonnet. Hey, let's talk about some tight ends.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Mike Gesicki obviously is the name that a lot of people want to talk about. And then Hunter Henry, who had a massive week for the Patriots. And I'm going to tell you right now, in our auction draft where we have Pat Freiermuth as our starter and Noah Fant as our backup, I was not interested in either one of them. I didn't think that mattered from a fantasy perspective to the extent that I would imagine people are going to be bidding for Hunter Henry and Gesicki. Am I wrong, Jake, in making that assumption?
I would absolutely drop Noah Fant and throw a Henry bid on there.
We're dropping Noah Fant. It's a matter of what cheap tight end we're getting. I don't know if it matters to jump out to get one of them, is what I'm saying.
I think if you need a week 3 streamer, like if you've gotten Njoku or Ferguson in one of those situations, I think Gesicki has a slightly better matchup here. He's home against Washington on Monday Night Football. So, yeah, I'd be over that here. The thing with Gesicki is he had the lowest snap share among all 3 Cincinnati tight ends. But, of course, he ran the most routes. I think, we've seen a lot of increase in 2 tight end formats and it being more run-heavy. So I think a lot of those plays were blocking plays where Gesicki was out there anytime he was going to run. Now, pretty good stat line. Caught 7 of 9 targets for 91 yards week 2. Week 1 stat line wasn't great, so you see a floor, 3 of 4 targets for 18 yards. But do remember he had a touchdown called back by a holding penalty here. And the Bengals need pass catchers. Right? Because we don't know if T. Higgins is going to come back. We saw Jamar Chase yelling at the coach and being a wide receiver diva throughout the later stages of that Chiefs game this week. I think Gesicki is the better short-term play, possibly. The better long-term play though is Hunter Henry. Now the reason I say that is because week 3 Hunter Henry is at the Jets on Thursday Night Football, so you have a short turnaround and a really, really good defense. So if you need to stream someone for week 3, it's Gesicki. But if you need someone longer term, I'm definitely taking Hunter Henry because he had a 93% route run rate for the Patriots, or route share. No other player was above 67%. Hunter Henry had half of his team's total targets. Half of his team's total targets, guys. I cannot preach enough to follow the targets. He's clearly the only one that Jacoby Brissett is comfortable throwing to. And then, of course, when it was all said and done, Hunter Henry had 73% of the team's receiving yards. Guys, this team wants to run the ball a ton. Their passing game is short dinks and dunks. Jacoby Brissett is not throwing the ball downfield, even if he did have a receiver that was suddenly capable of that, which they don't. So Hunter Henry is the number 1 pass-catching option, yes, on a bad team. Though the Patriots could just easily be 2-0 right now. So I think we have to maybe when it's all said and done, we'll be back here. But I don't know if we can necessarily, have them be the the turd pile of the league here that we constantly dump on every single week. That was a gross analogy. But anyway, Hunter Henry is the long-term tight end to own here. He's definitely not over the hill in tight end years. He's got some productive years left in him, and yeah, clearly he's the favorite there. So if it's a long-term guy, if it's going to maybe be your solution the rest of the year, I could see it being Hunter Henry.
I don't think the Patriots offense can continue to function at this level throughout the whole season. I don't think Hunter Henry can continue to get 73% of the yards and for them to be in a position to win. I know they want to run the ball. I just think this is a week 2 thing. And by week 8, you're oh, why do the Patriots only have 112 passing yards? It's because they are just awful and everyone knows exactly what they're doing. And I don't want to invest in that offense. So that's the difference.
But in that scenario, Hunter Henry has 78 receiving yards.
Maybe. But if I'm a defense, I can key in on them running, and I can key in on stopping literally only Hunter Henry. Now, that might change if it's Drake Mays, your starting quarterback, and that's the scenario in which I'm interested more in Hunter Henry. But right now, I don't think Hunter Henry is any different than Gesicki, different than Pat Freiermuth, different than Colby Parkinson. I think they're all kind of tight end 10 overall, and that's sort of what you're shooting for if you're in that spot. So give me real quick the 2 streaming defenses. I answer a few questions in the chat.
I have a few of them to consider. My plan was always to have draft Seattle with the last pick in my draft, start them week 1 and 2 against the Broncos and the Patriots, and then grab them for somebody else. But week 3, the Seahawks have the Dolphins and Skylar Thompson, so I'm actually keeping Seattle in those situations here. You also want to consider the Browns home against the Giants and their terrible offense. Browns are probably lesser on the roster And here, Myles Garrett's a force that can propel that defense. We're picking on the Broncos and Bo Nix, who won't really throw the ball downfield, and when he does, throws an throws interceptions and is almost Sean Payton's. I think Sean Payton, despite not letting him throw downfield, is throwing in too many different personnel combinations. Jerry talks about this in his box score breakdown, where most teams have 3 formations with a goal line heavy short yardage one, but the Broncos are all over the place. I think they might be throwing a bit too much at him, mixed with not letting him do enough. So it's just a bad combo. You want to target the Broncos all year, even though the Bucs defense has been absolutely ravaged by injuries. I think there'll be just enough to stop the Broncos at home. It would be pick on the Panthers and use the Raiders this week against Andy Dalton because, Max Crosby is an absolute force here. But I'm actually going to pump the brakes on that a little bit now that Dalton's taking over for Bryce Young here. So I'm looking at Seattle, Cleveland, and Tampa Bay as our streamers.
Because I'm in control of our roster decisions in the NFFC draft that we did together. Sure. We have 2 defenses on the team. I had the Seahawks defense, and then Saturday, because we had an empty roster spot, essentially, I had picked up the Raiders defense with the idea that they're playing against Bryce Young. Yeah. So with the idea that you have both on the team, which one are you starting this week, Seattle or the Raiders?
If it were me running that team, I'd be cutting the Raiders as the first cut for any of the waiver wire pickups here that we might need. Obviously, we have to fill Pacheco in there, right?
No. I don't have Pacheco anymore. No.
Oh, jeez. You lucky SOB. I've got him everywhere. Jesus.
We have Joe Mixon, but thankfully we have plenty. And we also have Quentin Johnston on that team, which was one of our random last dollar bids that we had.
Ones. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, dude, I took Quentin Johnston in our sleeper super flex. I've got him and Braelon Allen in that. So I've got all the hot picks a couple months ahead of time, I guess, by a pure stroke of luck. Well, man, dude, we got through a lot of material in that 50 minutes there, Joe. Again, fast forward or rewind back to the beginning if you joined in the stream late and want to hear our full Kansas City backfield breakdown and how we're disagreeing a little bit and how I'm trying to be sneaky, and we'll see how that goes. But, man, it's been a pleasure, Joe.
Yeah, otherwise we'll see you again next week. Best of luck to your fantasy lineups.